Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Friday, finally. The end of the week is here upon us. We hope everyone had a good week. Let's get right into some space weather news. Right now our solar wind speeds are moderate, to say the least, 410.6 kilometers per second with a density of 4.7. Looking at our sun, like I reported this morning, and we are looking at 0 sunspots. This is now day number 4 in a row and puts us at 57 days total without sunspots. And we can go over here to spaceweather.com, I'm sorry, thegrandsolarminimum.com in our space weather section. Check out the rest of our space weather stats for tonight. Solar X-ray flux. Boy, is that a different scene than what we were looking at last week. It was all over the place. But that sunspot AR 2736 has exited. No more C-class flares, and all has been quiet. Nothing more than a KP of 3 as well in the last 48 hours. Like I said, no sunspots to report at this time. And taking a look at the SDO in motion. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here, guys. This is the coronal hole that we are looking at. We are expecting some increased solar wind speeds to happen somewhere around March 30th or March 31st. And as we look at our star to see if we have anything else cooking up in the back, well, right now the star looks quiet. Coronal hole possibility on the horizon on the eastern limb just in a few days. Pretty decent sized one if you ask me. But other than that, no immediate threats of sunspots or any kind of solar activity to be concerned with at the time. Taking a look at our TSI reading for March 20th, 2019, 1360.6911. Alright, let's get right into it. Kind of around the world update here, and this is not a lot that I'm going to go over, but it is a lot at the same time. Squaw Valley snowfall on record pace right now, according to Tony Heller. And it says here it has received now 658 inches of snow this winter, and for the date is 4 inches ahead of its previous record in the year 2017. Taking a look at some charts here, we see the increase snowfall from 2017 to snowfall here in 2019. And again, only 4 inches away from the record of 2017. This comes 3 years after experts announced the permanent drought in California. California braces for unending drought, and the date was May 9th, 2016. Look at that. This is why I like Tony. Straight to the point. Not flashy. Puts out the information without being cocky. Thanks El Nino, but California's drought is probably forever. That's a beautiful one, and there's links back to this. Let's take a look and see what that. Gosh. So thanks El Nino, but California's drought is probably forever. What's funny about this is that 2015 into 16, that El Nino was a bit. It was a bit more impressive than the one that we are experiencing right now, which is what we would call a Modaki. Drought is a tricky thing to define. It's not just a matter of how little water falls out of the sky. If it were you, would be forgiven for believing that California's wettest winter had ended or even alleviated, the worst drought in state history. But no, despite the snow in the Sierra Nevada, the water filling Lake Shasta and the rapids, the Kern River, California is still in the state of a drought for now, maybe forever. On the 9th of May, Jerry Brown issued an executive order in 2016 that makes permanent certain emergency water cuts from the past few years. Now we know that the drought is becoming a regular occurrence and water conservation must be part of our everyday life. Okay, so, this article is going to go over some things that happened back then. Bravo to Brown for actually taking the proper action in, conserving water consumption. We were in a drought. Okay, it was pretty bad. But it's fun to read the old headlines, from back in the day. Change to snow saves California Olympic site. Old article here. Tony's very good. This is February 1960. Just he throws a little bit of everything out here, guys. The proof is in the pudding. But here we are 3 years later, and we are past the fear-mongering. And that guy looks angry, don't he? But we're past the fear-mongering and the lies. Here's another lie. So we had Al Gore tell us that no snow after 2013. Our children wouldn't see it. They probably wouldn't know what it is, especially in North America. Then we had the lie about the polar ice caps melting. Now listen, guys. Summer, they retreat. Winter, they come back. It's all about how strong they come back. And yes, 2016 and before that, we had some weak numbers from our ice growth. In fact, 2018 was pretty puny. But it compared to years past. But we started to see a rise late, a rapid freeze, actually, in my opinion. And it's carrying over into 2019. Is it record levels? No, absolutely not. But we covered it here not too long ago that Greenland's ice sheets are now growing once again and faster than once thought. But again, it's just interesting that we see time goes by and here we unveil more lies. Now, I'd like to say this channel here is pacing themselves. We know we've got another solar cycle in front of us before we get to the real nitty-gritty of the grand solar minimum. And I'm not saying that we're not going to see weather and climate conditions like we're going to see in the grand solar minimum. We're in a solar minimum right now. And it's going to be, you know, a little bit longer before we start to come out of this into a week maximum. I honestly believe as low as the last minimum has been, cycle 24 as well, that we're seeing the possibilities of what we're going to see in a grand solar minimum. But when we do finally get to that grand part of the minimum, it's going to be more frequent. It's going to be more intense. It's not this right here, believe it or not. I hate saying this, guys, and it's so cliche, but it's such the tip of the iceberg. These aren't happening on a regular event. This is nothing yet. We haven't seen the worst. Let's give you an update real quick on Iran. News agency reports flash flood death toll up to 44. In Tehran, their semi-official Tasnim news agency is reporting that the death toll of flash floods across the country has risen to 44 from 17 from what we reported as well. The Thursday report quotes an official in the country's emergency medical services agency saying that 44 people have died since Monday in 10 provinces. Since March 19th, many roads in Iran have been affected by heavy rainfall that caused flash flooding. Last year, 30 people were killed in flash flooding in the eastern part of a neighboring province out there. So just a quick update. And guys, March 19th, today is the 29th. Some of us, it's the 30th of March. But my point is, we're over 10 days now of flooding conditions. And that's, you know, same with Mozambique. And an update here. Guys, this is how bad the situation's getting. The lives and livelihoods of farmers and fishers in 3 southern African countries hit by tropical cyclone Idai are under severe threat, with communities in Mozambique bearing a particularly heavy burden. For a country where 80% of the population depends on agriculture, keeping animals alive, rehabilitating damaged land, and rebooting food production will be critical as the waters recede. Now, still waiting for the waters to recede, by the way. Significant swaths of cropland were flooded on the eve of April, May maize and sorghum harvests. Most losses are expected in Mozambique's Manica and Sofala provinces, which usually contribute about 25% of the national cereal output. It says here, before the storm hit, around half of Mozambique's rural families had some maize, cassava, and bean reserves, but the flooding will have been, it says, ruined much of these, both food and seed purposes. So, in other words, we are experiencing the same thing in Mozambique that we are experiencing in Iowa, in Nebraska, in South Dakota, and more to come. And that is this grain that is being exposed to floodwaters. Look, guys, a silo, once it's underwater, the entire thing is contaminated. All right, more I read about this, you cannot recover any grain from a silo that has water at any point. Even if the top 50% is dry, it's still contaminated. It is no longer for human consumption and possibly not even good enough for animal feed. So, another part of the world getting monster flooding, experiencing the same kind of disasters, but the worst part about this is that these are areas that are not developed like they are here in the United States. All right, let's just put that out there. So these people are getting hit twice as hard. Now, I'm not saying that our farmers here in the United States aren't feeling it, because I know right now the feeling across the country for farmers all over is scary. It's a heavy heart. It's stress, anxiety. And, you know, you can talk about whatever you want, what's causing it. I think this channel and a few others out there have tried to warn you, Ice Age Farmer, about the food insecurities during these grand solar minimums, and we are approaching one, so conditions will continue to deteriorate. Weaker magnetosphere, allowing more cosmic radiation into our atmosphere, that so far studies have proven that cosmic radiation, cosmic rays, do seed our clouds and create cloud nucleation. And cosmic rays are highly charged particles. And when you're talking about highly charged particles teaming up with water vapor and other particulates already in the atmosphere, supercharged particles, guys, abundance, more than usual. There's a reason why they say this is a 124-year-old flood event. We haven't seen this kind of action in over 150 years. Think about it. When you hear someone say it's been 150 years, 160 years, 180 years since they've seen that kind of precipitation, it lines up with the cycle of a grand minimum. And everybody, before you start, I know 206 years or so is the cycle. What I'm trying to say is that, yes, things do have an abrupt climate change effect to it at some point during these deep grand solar minimums. But to understand how we cool as a planet, and when it comes to solar activity, it's a decadal thing. So each cycle, we continue to see numbers and conditions worsen. That's why I believe this upcoming cycle is just part of the puzzle that's keeping us going towards a grand solar minimum. But with all these floodings that we're seeing across the world, guys, this isn't you can talk about water vapor all day long and warming temperatures over the past several years. Some will say we haven't seen any warming at all. Some will say that it's not been enough. Some are saying we're in a warming pause. Either way you look at it, without particles in your atmosphere, you don't have raindrops, snowflakes, all right? And we're not putting enough particulates in the atmosphere to create that effect either. We're 0.04% part of the problem. CO2 emissions from man is 0.004%, I believe, part of the problem. Not even 0.5%, guys. That's how much we impact the climate. The rest is all Mother Nature. And you see it all the time. Whether people say it all, Mother Nature's going to do what Mother Nature's going to do. Right now, she's in a cycle. And we all know about cycles. They happen continuously, usually uninterrupted. And right on schedule, are we in for another cycle that's going to be the experience that so many of us are talking about with climate change. You know, I had somebody ask me today if I didn't believe that we were going through climate change. And I told him, I said, I do believe we're experiencing climate change. But it's natural. It's a cycle that happens. I also said that that doesn't mean I am minimizing the events that are happening around us and that we need to do something to help better prepare ourselves. But there's nothing that lawmakers or man can do to stop this. The best we can do right now is adapt and prepare for ourselves. Maybe the hope down the road is everybody pulls together and we can form big communities and work together in the future. I hope that's what happens. There's a lot of people out there whose agendas are very unclear, and it's concerning because some of these people out there are actually promoting the preparedness of a grand solar minimum and its conditions, but some of these people spew out hate and anti-religion and anti-everything. It's almost sounding like a dangerous militia, not a preparation thing anymore. So we have to be sensible about this, guys. We have to get real about this. It's not just here in the United States. It's worldwide. The floods, the days of crops, fields being underwater, cities being destroyed, infrastructures being destroyed, and it's happening every single week, if not almost every other day now, that we hear about another area getting a 100 or 150-year-old flood. And it's just so funny to me that the correlation is there when you talk about the science of what makes raindrops and snowflakes, particulates, vapor, and now that we know, thanks to people like the Cloud Project and Heinrich Finsmark, Dr. Jasper Kirksby as well, who are proving that our atmosphere is being seeded and more cloud nucleation is happening. Also dropping more precipitation. Also, let's not forget, low solar wind makes the jet stream. Also, so far, there is a correlation. Oh yes, during minimums, especially deep minimums, the jet stream, when we experience low solar wind, will be a lot more up and down, so to speak, versus when we're in a maximum, the jet streams are a little tighter. There's not so much troughing going on. It's a tight jet stream. But the weaker the magnetosphere and the lower the solar wind, the more out of control and out of whack the jet stream seems to be. And I'm telling you, I've seen some weird looking jet streams this year, especially in 2019. And folks, I'm here to say right now, 2019 into 2020, here it comes. This was the winter coming up, 2019 to 2020, and even 2020 into 2021. Those are the winters that a lot of people have been warning us about that are upcoming. So think about it this way. We smashed the snow mass record this year in the northern hemisphere. And if conditions continue to get worse, then what's going to happen next spring? And the following spring after that, when we beat the year before that snow mass? I hope we don't.
Here on GSM,
We'll be
we
right
understand not everyone has a full hour to devote to listening to our show. With our new channel format, we are breaking the show up into 3 segments: world news, climate news, and weather. All segments will post separately on the channel right after the show.
All right, so here we go. AOC, you know, we can't stop talking about her, no matter how hard we try. She won't go away. And I've found a clip here. What's up with that? About a 3-minute clip, and I want you guys to listen to the ridiculousness of her rant. All right? Let's check it out.
You know, we talk about cost. We're going to pay for this whether we pass a Green New Deal or not. Because as towns and cities go underwater, as wildfires ravage our communities, we are going to pay. And we're either going to decide if we're going to...
I hate stopping the speech, but if she knew anything about climate and its history, she would know that if she would look back into the 1920s and 30s, we had way more wildfires than what we're seeing right now, okay? The only reason why they don't seem as bad as what they were in the 30s is because we didn't have social media to report every time somebody farted.
pay to react or if we're going to pay to be proactive. And what we know is that prevention, you know, when you spend less money on prevention, you can prevent a lot of that damage from happening in
You got that?
the first place. So it's not a question of whether we're going to spend the money, because I'm very sad to say that the government knew that climate change was real starting as far back as 1989 when NASA was reporting this. And
Okay, so 1989, NASA was reporting increasing temperatures. NASA did not report global warming was man-made. That was made up by her fellow colleagues back when she was in diapers.
And the private sector knew way back in the 1970s. So we had until around the time I was born to address this issue. I wish it didn't have to cost so much, but I'm going to turn 30 this year, and for the entire 30 years of my lifetime, we did not make substantial investments to prepare our entire country for what we knew was coming.
Okay. I'm sure you've seen the reports. This woman actually answered a casting call. All right. I want you guys to watch her body language, how perfect it seems at times. And there's a reason for that. Again, she answered a casting call, and next thing you know, she is now a congresswoman.
So now it's coming all up at the end. It's like when we live our whole lives and we don't eat healthily and we don't move and we pursue unhealthy activities. And then at the end of our lives, our healthcare costs are very high. We have the choice to lower the cost now, because I can...
Okay. So basically, your fat ass is causing healthcare rates to go up, you fat ass. Basically is what she's saying, you fat lazy ass. You know, this person shouldn't even be allowed to speak anymore. She continues to make her party look even worse. Obesity is a problem in the United States, but let's face it, folks, there's all kinds of factors that go in with reasons why we have obesity. Maybe lack of it is education of nutrition. Maybe there's also people out there who have real medical conditions that they cannot lose the weight no matter what they do or try. So I don't like how she sits here and read between the lines, folks. You lazy fat asses out there are the reason why that our health care is so high in the end of your lives. We got to pay for your lazy fat asses and all your problems because you're just a lazy fat ass. You don't move and you don't do any exercise. You lazy fat ass. That's what she's saying. Again, I just, to speak like that in general on obesity, there's so many factors out there. People's genetics are different. DNA is, thyroid issues are out there. Diabetes. Of course, a lot of people get diabetes from weight issues, but we don't know what leads to those weight issues in the first place. So I don't like the assumption that everyone who has a weight issue is just a lazy fat ass. I know a lot of people who work circles around me and are huge, and no matter what they do, they can't get rid of the weight. I know a gentleman right now who probably weighs 500 pounds almost, but busts his butt at work. And he's one of the top producers of this company. He's not lazy. He's at it every day, busting his ass, 10 hours a day. So, again, just more idiocracy from this woman.
Tell you the cost of pursuing a Green New Deal will be far less than the cost of not passing it. And with respect to our brothers and sisters and neighbors that are in agriculture, bring them to the table. Let's hold hearings. Let's add provisions. Let's amend the legislation to accommodate for the just transition and for the encouragement of those industries to grow. And I would also encourage to my colleague on the other side of the aisle that thinks we're trying to ban cows to actually read the resolution and understand that there's nothing to that effect in the legislation. And not only that, but we're trying to invest in these communities and our agricultural workers so that they can enjoy prosperity into the next century. We talk about
bunch of garbage there, bunch of regurgitated garbage that she's speaking on right now because she's an actress. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Bring the farmers to the table. Let's get them in hearings. What are the farmers going to tell you? You bring the farmers to the table, they're going to expect a check when they walk out. Because right now, let's take a look at what's going on around. Okay, you want to try to play the heartstrings and bring up the farmers as part of the victim, and we got to do this for the. To me, it's like using the kids for the climate change and protesting by leaving school. Now we're gonna tug on the country's heartstrings, because if you guys are paying attention, you know that the farmers are hurting the worst right now. So she's going to hijack the emotions of real people who are actually really working, unlike her. All right, these guys are the reason why this country goes. Without food, we don't live. We don't survive. So trying to grandstand and politicize and try to paint this picture, let's get the farmers involved because they got the solution for climate change. Yeah, okay. If you believe that man has anything to do with climate change, I guess you're all for the Green New Deal. But if you're a skeptic at all, I'm not even saying a complete denier. If you're even a skeptic, well, then you're labeled a Marxist or a Stalinist because, you don't want to do anything to the atmosphere. I saw a commercial today from ExxonMobil talking about carbon capture technology and improving it and showing trees and talking about CO2 and how plants love it. And I'm like, yes, thank you. And why I'm saying that is because ExxonMobil is saying, hey, we burn fossil fuels, but we also want to do it responsibly. We want the air you breathe to be clean, and we want the drinking water you drink to be clean. I stand 100% on that side. Fossil fuels, yes. Safety, of course. Technology to capture the pollution, absolutely. Do I believe that pollution is impacting the climate? Absolutely not. And I hope that I've done a decent job of proving that case with you out there, the viewers. We've interviewed people like John Casey, Valentina Zarkova, David Dilley, Ralph Nitzwe. Oh my God, I just butchered his name, didn't I? Rolf. Not Ralph. Witche. It's been a long day, guys. I'm a little upset right now because this little clip triggered me from her trying to play like, oh, the poor the poor farmers, you're right. Do something about it. Don't use them for your political and popularity gain. Do something for these people. Let's start. All right? Here we go. Gainesville, Florida. Watermelon crop damage. Summer may not be the same this year. The powerful hailstorm hit Wednesday morning may have done significant damage to north central Florida's watermelon crop. When TV20 reporter Landon Haar got into the fields around 5 this afternoon, he said the hail was gone, but the effects will be felt for a long time to come. It says here, I knew that a potential scenario for significant damage. The aftermath was easy to see. If you look the dirt around the plants, you could see pock marks where the hail hit, and even plastic covering meant to keep young plants warm has small BB-sized tears in it. Hail isn't a new phenomenon for farmers to deal with, but this storm hit harder than most. Does not give us an exact number here. 40-acre field may come out as a total loss. He said it's probably roughly lost $100,000 invested into the field. Only time will tell if the young plants can bounce back. I won't know nothing about replanting until about Saturday. So 3 days. So tomorrow, actually. It says here, a watermelon specialist for the northern Florida region told me this region produces roughly 1/3 of Florida's watermelon crop every year. 33%, folks. Roughly 7,000 acres in total. He says from listening to farmers today, at least half of the acreage has been impacted to some degree by the hailstorm. Not all is lost, but we're looking at a potential of a 50% crop loss in northern Florida, a part of the state that produces 1/3 of the watermelon crop. That number's about to go down. And then this number goes up. And I found this article, guys, and we'll leave the link later after the show. This doesn't tell you why the food prices are going up. The reason why I picked this article, I found it interesting because it said, well, we thought it was going to be only 0.7 cents, 0.7% estimated increase for food. But now they changed that tune to 2%. I love how they spell percent, by the way. It's adorable. But the thing that strikes me is that this article was kind of just leaked out there. I think this is a little read between the lines. We have an article that talks about the markets are going to go up for food costs. And this is before we start to see the real results of crop damage in the United States. So if they're already expecting it to be a certain point and it goes up even more, and the year really hasn't even started, guys, we could be talking about a lot higher number next year for food costs to go up. So I think they're being modest, but I wanted to point this article out because it's being talked about, food prices on the rise. And then, of course, this article says it all, folks. This March 19th, 2019, aerial photo shows flooding along the Missouri River, the Pacific Junction, Iowa. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says rivers breached at least a dozen levees in Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. This isn't even talking about South Dakota or North Dakota yet as well, including parts of Minnesota. It's time to freak out. Violent climate change is here now. The unthinkable has happened and will continue to happen. We have never seen catastrophic flooding like this. The scope of this historic disaster has touched nearly every aspect of Nebraska, says Colonel Michael Mannion, said in the early days as record floods devastated a wide swath of the farm belt across Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and several other states. Stories and images have been surfacing showing the complete and utter chaos. Nebraska is in a chaos which quickly spread into other states. Early estimates of crop loss in livestock is approaching $3 billion, and that figure is expected to rise as flooding is now predicted to last well into May. The flooding on the fields will render them all but impossible to use. And that's just through May. That's not even including any other precipitation that we might have to come here in the near future. Fields that are normally used for growing beans, corn, and grain are under tons of snow or several feet of water. This means these fields will more than likely not produce a crop this year. That's right, folks. They're not expecting the crops to grow right now in the fields that have snowpack and water. They're not even saying, no, there's no chance. They're saying there's no chance. More than 200 million people in 25 states are at risk. Let me repeat this. More than 200 million people in 25 states are at risk. NOAA had warned. Now, we all know how I feel about NOAA. So for them to come through and actually admit that something's really bad like this, we better take a heed. We know how they like to cook the books. We know how they like to minimize certain activities and actions. Now, of course, they're going to run to the AGW microphone and say, global warming is causing the worst flooding in history of man. We have to act now. The Green New Deal is a must. We know better than that over here. It's an agricultural wipeout, which has very little to do with temperature and everything to do with increased precipitation in the form of snow or rain. It looked like an ocean from the early days. Governor Kim Reynolds warned Iowans that the snow melt and spring rains would create additional flooding in the weeks ahead because of compromised levees. So there's areas that are dealing with compromised levees with snow on the ground that's still going to melt, creating more flooding. And on top of the rains that you get in this time of the year in this part of the country, are you kidding me? Global warming caused the snow, which is causing the floods. That's what they're going to say. I hear it now. Global warming caused all that snowpack this year. Now it's warm and all that snow is now water. Give me a break. Devastating flooding came at worst possible time for Midwest farmers. There is no denying that the weather, the actual climate, has been changing violently. You know, I'm going to stop right here. I agree with this article, but I think they're pushing it a little too hard for we can't blame it on one specific thing, but we do know that there are a lot of correlations happening right now that we've already spoke about with cloud nucleation, cosmic rays, intense precipitation usually follows that as well. And if we look back in previous minimums and really deep minimums and grand solar minimums, we see record-breaking events because these solar minimums create a ripe environment for heavy precipitation. Now this gets interesting now. What needs to be explained is the dramatically increased precipitation, where the trend line is going. We have to turn to science for this. The astrophysics, which tell us that increasing cosmic radiation is seeding more clouds, causing more rain and snow, much more. One of the classic characteristics of grand solar minimum is increased cosmic rays, creating more cloud coverage and more precipitation. How great is this article find for me tonight? Because Mari has already discussed this as well. Increased cosmic rays causing cloud nucleation during grand solar minimums. Behind the Svensmark article. That is exactly what is happening, causing flooding, not just in the central and the eastern USA, but many other places around the world where flooding is killing people and destroying crops. It would already be an utter national nightmare even if the flooding was all over, but NOAA is informing us the nightmare is just beginning, with catastrophic flooding continuing for the next 2 months. 2 months! What's at stake? Food reserves lost. We have witnessed loss of massive stockpiles of wheat, corn, soybeans that have been stashed away as farmers hope for a price increase. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as of December 1st, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Illinois had 6.75 billion bushels of corn, soybeans, and wheat stored on their farms. The amount of food that has just been lost is absolutely staggering. Due to the trade war, farmers were storing more wheat, corn, and soybeans than ever, and now the floodwaters have destroyed much of what has been stored. So future past production is being wiped out together. I don't know how to put it any other way. The reserves are being lost. The current production's being lost. Last year, we're still waiting for government financial aid for these farmers that lost crops last year. We talked last year about the pecan crop in Georgia. Trees that were uprooted. 7 years before those trees mature to produce again. 7 years. Those areas that were total loss are now going to have to wait for 7 years to make a penny back. So what's going to have to happen? Hopefully, government aid kicks in and helps these farmers get back on their feet for the next 7 years until they can provide for themselves once again. Hey, act of God. Nothing they can do about hurricanes ripping up their crops. Let's continue on. Economic effects. Before we even look at other agricultural disasters that are becoming disturbingly frequent, it is important to note that there are macroeconomic shocks associated with the infrastructure damage, agricultural losses, commodity price spikes caused by droughts, floods, hurricanes, amplified by climate change, according to Glenn Rudebush of San Francisco Fed's Executive Vice President, meaning climate change could spur financial crisis. True. Climate change can. Absolutely. Just not man-made. If one reads the mass media, will not be alarmed at what is happening in the belly of America, even though huge parts of many states are suddenly underwater. Let me repeat. If one reads the mass media, one will not be alarmed at what is happening in the belly of America, even though huge parts of many states are suddenly underwater. Suddenly meaning, yeah, the temperature melting the snow, causing the floods. Here we are. It's not being reported enough. We already talked to you guys about the olive oil catastrophe. 1.13 billion euros. They're possibly going to have to import olive oil in Italy Climate change and apocalypse. Potato apocalypse. Say that really fast. After a devastating potato growing season, 500 million pounds of Canadian potatoes are feared wasted. 500 million pounds of Canadian potatoes are feared wasted, and many of the survivors are misshapen, undersized, threatening to turn French fries to short and brown. Mini fries. United Potato Growers of Canada announced they suffered a trifecta of bad weather across the country. You ain't kidding. Late spring, hot summer, cold fall saw an estimated 6,000 hectares abandoned. United Potato Growers General Manager Kevin McIsaac said, I've been involved in the industry myself for 25 plus years. I've never seen anything like this. It's pretty bad right now. Dramatic climate change everywhere. Scenes like this are becoming sadder. Not just here in Mexico. Australia lost thousands, hundreds of thousands of livestock this year. They talk about it here in this article as well. After record-breaking floods, as producers said, more than 300,000 cows were drowned or washed away in the vast continent's northeast. Talking about the Australia floods. The number of estimated dead is now 500,000 dead cows. In America, it was not the flooding that did the cows in, but the heavy snowfall, gale force winds, extreme cold hit multiple dairying regions in Idaho and Washington in midwinter, leaving nearly 2,000 dead. Dairy farmers who have been in the business their entire lives said they have never seen anything like it. So potato farmers never seen anything like it. Dairy farmers never seen anything like it. Here we go. Conclusions. Very important part of this article, my favorite part. Climatologist Judith Curry is rocking climate change zealots. In her latest paper, Ms. Curry found that the current rising sea levels are not abnormal, nor can they be pinned on human-caused climate change, arguing that the oceans have been on a slow creep for the last 150 years before the post-1950 climb in CO2 emissions. Greenland's biggest glacier, which we talked about earlier, began advancing rapidly, almost 26 feet per day. In 2016, airborne and satellite imagery, that glacier is advancing about 1.8 miles, and the ice is thickening nearly 130 feet annually, according to NASA. So all you folks out there who think Greenland's ice is melting, it's advancing about 1.8 miles and thickening nearly 130 feet per year. It's pretty intense. And that's according to a study published in Nature Geoscience. Link is in that article as well. It is very hard to see the North Pole full of ice and hear about the Northern Hemisphere being the biggest glacier growing, and no doubt the global warming hysteria. Again, it is very hard to see the North Pole full of ice and hear about the Northern Hemisphere biggest glacier growing and not about the global warming hysteria. Yet hotter or colder, the climate is changing. It's getting colder, hotter in some places, more snow, more rain, more floods, more drought, more big stones, more of everything, including glacier ice. In this time of dramatic climate change, we also have volcanoes exploding and more earthquakes, also predictable from past periods of climate change in conjunction with, that's right folks, grand solar minimum. This is basic foundation stuff that we learned from John Casey. It does not matter what you believe in the end. No one can ignore the fact that we are experiencing a grand solar minimum and a violent change, or a climate change that goes with it. It can be ignored, but not denied. In February, we did not have one sunspot. Solar activity is declining, and for sure, we know it's not from too much CO2. So, this person did a very good job putting this piece together, coldclimatechange.com. He also did a good job of spelling it out. And yeah, he gets a little fiery here. It's time to freak out. Violent climate change is here now! ! The unthinkable has happened and will continue to happen. Why is this guy so upset? Why is he so freaked out? I think the stats that we just read to you should be enough. The footage.
Hi, folks.
Everywhere. This is the stuff that we weren't expecting. No one talked about this kind of flooding. We talked about the record snow. And we started to, hey, where's that snow melt going to go? We started to talk about it a little bit. But I don't think anybody realized the big picture here. And we got to deal with Colorado still, guys. You say 144% above its normal snowpack?
144. Right?
Yep.
I made the Algor chart.
So, Denver's getting 1 to 3 inches right now as we speak. Snow. Still. So, Miss Cortez, the next time you want to use the farmers as a tool in your plot, I think you need to understand how disrespectful you're being right now. When I read off what I've just read off about the state of our agriculture and how serious it is, how farmers across the United States, they're losing last year's reserves and this year's surplus and the current production. And oh, by the way, where is the latest weekly crop report? This is dated from the 17th through the 23rd. Today's the 29th. And looking at this is alarming. They're not even talking about how many days it's going to take before they can get into the fields to work. Look at this one, guys. Look at that. This is the top scale here is what we are currently drought right now. This is the current drought monitor, which I think that is actually going to show differently as well soon. This is the outlook. Almost non-existent. But yet California, by the way, there's not a spot on that map in California for drought. Unreal. But again, guys, we don't have the latest on the farm report yet. And we haven't seen reports yet on how many days until these farmers can start working in the fields. And that's alarming, because I remember this time last year we were starting to talk about it. So we'll see as we go into April. Guys, stick around. We'll be right back. We'll get into a weather article, and then I'll take a look at our GFS weather outlook. Stay tuned.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.
All right, we're back. And let's go ahead and go over to weather.com. Coast-to-coast snowstorm will spread rain, thunderstorms, snow into the plains, Midwest, east into the weekend. Sounds like a repeat. I mean, the last couple storms we've covered, man, they've done the same thing. Here we have current radar. This was as of 7:05 p.m. More rain for Iowa. Snow in Nebraska. 3 to 5 inches it looks like. Possible falling. Denver, light snow right now. Kansas City, you got a rain out, almost a rain out in your baseball game yesterday. A 2.5 hour delay. More rain was in the area today as well. On Friday morning, golf ball size hail was reported in parts of Oklahoma, including Arcadia area, near Arkansas City, Kansas. Heavy snow and rain downed tree limbs and slowed the commute Friday morning in the Salt Lake City area. Almost April. Heavy rain from the system triggered flash flooding late Wednesday just north of Redding, California. In the Bella Vista area, parts of California, Sierra, and Nevada have picked up more than a foot of snowfall still. Here's a look at what to expect Friday through Friday night. We still have snow in the Central Plains, Denver, Nebraska, Northwest Kansas, places like Almena, Kansas, and Norton, Kansas. You guys are looking at a possibility of 3 to 5, possibly localized 8 inches of snow. Not uncommon. I lived out in this part of Kansas, and we saw winter last all the way through probably middle of April, where we would get snow overnight and it would melt in the day. I think we actually called April 15th. It was officially marked as February 82nd because it was cold and snowy still. But lots of moisture coming back into the Midwest, Indiana, Illinois, Northwest Ohio, Michigan, Flint area, Detroit. You guys will see some moderate rain and some snow in the UP of Michigan as well. Saturday, this system will continue to trek across the Midwest into the Ohio Valley, the Kentucky-Tennessee Valley as well, with moderate rainfall reaching western New York. Snow in Canada, heavy snow at that. Temperatures, guys, central New York, 64 degrees. So this will definitely be an all rain event. But look at this. Sunday, as this storm system moves through the Northeast, we will see moderate rain. And yes, snow will be back in the region as it gets a little cooler. Here's what they're looking at as far as snow rain totals. About less than an inch of rain in the Northeast for the most part. 1 to 3 inches of snow, isolated 3 to 5. And of course across Ohio, Indianapolis, and Illinois, we're looking at moderate rain of 1 to 2 inches. Still, a decent amount of rain. Area is already saturated. And let's go take a look now at our tropical tidbits. As you'll see, this model here is lining up with what we were just talking about. Snow in the northern plains, Nebraska, Kansas. This system moves through Saturday, heavy rain going into the Ohio Valley. Nothing too crazy, but still some moderate to heavy rain moving through the Northeast. Sunday night, we will see snow overnight in the Northeast, but that snow will be gone by daybreak. Temperatures are not expected to stay below freezing for very long. And then we have that storm system I was talking about last week that I thought maybe had a chance to be a coastal storm for the first week of April. Thankfully, that looks like it's moving out to the Atlantic. Snow showers up once again in Canada, and of course back in the Northwest, Wyoming, Idaho, parts of Montana, and Colorado seeing some light snow April 3rd. Low pressure system tries to get its act together. Another large area of precipitation moving across the country through areas that are already flooded as we speak. Now, a lot of this doesn't really get its act together until it's past Nebraska and going into Missouri, Iowa, and other parts, Arkansas, Louisiana. It intensifies through Friday. By next weekend, we will see a repeat of more rain moving through the same areas that we saw this weekend. Again, this is just moderate, usual spring type moisture. Then it gets a little more active in the south, Texas especially. We're watching this little low pressure system here in the Gulf. And by April 8th, this thing is kind of hanging around. It's been there lulled out now for almost 3 days into the future cast. So GFS is picking up on something possibly decent size and just kind of hanging around in Texas for a few days. So we could see some flooding issues in the deep south as well heading into the second week of April, and really high pressure trying to dominate most of the country once that low pressure system moves through on the 10th. Northwest, you're still going to have chances of snow all the way through Thursday, April 11th. Colorado, Denver, not out of the question for Friday, April 12th. And then this very interesting setup here. We have two patterns where basically we are seeing troughing northeast cold air and the northwest cold air, and then that warm air in the south and through the middle part of the country into the Midwest. And this storm looks very interesting. We talked about this, I think, the last broadcast. But look at how tight those bars are. That's going to mean lots of wind, blizzard-like conditions in parts of Canada. And I think that snow that we're going to see there in the U.S. April 13th is going to be a quick-hitting theme. But look at the size of this storm and how tight these bars are. This is something to watch here for the upper Great Lakes, Minnesota, Wisconsin, UP of Michigan. It could get interesting here. By mid-April, we could see a decent little snowstorm, maybe the old man winter's last punch. But again, for the third straight weekend, we have moisture in the form of rain predicted to move through once again across the central part of the United States, through the Midwest, into the east, into the Northeast. So one thing is for certain, from Colorado all the way to the east, in the northeast, we are getting our fair chances of precipitation over the next several weeks to come. And again, nothing crazy that is jumping out at me, but the thing that's concerning is the temperatures continuing to get warmer as we approach deeper into spring. Areas that still have snow depth are going to continue to melt, creating more flooding. And folks, they're expecting this flooding to continue for the next 2 months. I just don't understand how. Here we go right here. I mean, this is where we got to watch, especially mid-April. Now we will start to see the rest of that snow melt for sure. Spring is trying to make an appearance. Summer's not far away if we're seeing 80s already in the south. I think it could be a hot summer for the deep south this year. I think we're going to see a lot of humidity. I think there's going to be a lot of heat index issues this year in the south. I think parts of Texas, southern Texas, eastern Texas will be part of that problem with the heat and humidity. And it could also, we could see some freakish hot weather on the East Coast, like Philly, Jersey, New York City. We'll see. The different central part of the United States, and the northern part especially, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, Minnesota, I really believe we're going to see just an average summer, below average temperatures at some point. But that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. But looking at things how they are right now, the patterns, folks, buckle up. It's going to be a long ride. And the key word here, two things: patience and preparing. And the patience comes because you have to have a formula on how to prepare. You just can't start randomly putting the list together. It's got to be some kind of a strategic plan, guys. We really have to think this out. And the time for sitting around talking about it, thinking about it, is getting to the point where that's got to stop. We've got to start putting it into action. AOC wants mankind to step into action to stop climate change. What her problem is that man is not going to do anything to stop this. So instead of shifting trillions of dollars on changing the infrastructure for solar and wind and other things like that, we need to spend that trillions of dollars on preparation for food prep, for possibility of starting indoor vertical growing on our crops now. We have to start coming up with new growing solutions as a country. If these events continue to happen and continue to get worse like they've been predicted, and like we've seen over the past 3 years, we've been told it's going to get worse, and it has each year. And that's pretty much all I got for tonight. Mari, did you want to step over here? Say hello to everybody.
I got. It is a busy night in the chat. You guys rock. I don't even know where to start. So I'll first start with the people who did Super Chat. That's only fair. So Thor, thank you. And Anthony, thank you. He says he loves us. Thank you. It feels good to be appreciated. I feel like YouTube scams us out of all that love, Jake.
Yeah, it does at times.
Typo is new to the channel and did a super chat and said thank you. And Two Trees, shout out to you as well. Thank you. So lots. The conversations are all over the place, Jake. People are talking about learning now new skills, in case they want them in the future. If you don't have electricity, anything can happen. Honing your skills, practicing now so you're ready if you need them. People are talking about coffee. What would you do if you didn't have electricity to make coffee, Jake? Do you know how to use a percolator?
Right.
So we have people in the chat practicing these new things. We have people in the chat having.
The best way to get a leg on that stuff, like survival. Look on Facebook for survival groups. Don't look for climate survival groups. Look for these survival groups out there. These real people that go in the woods and camp out in their sleeping bag and cook their food on rocks and fire. Find survival groups like that. That's the best. Don't find a climate motivated survival group. Find something that's just a guy who's really into the outdoors.
Really passionate about
that's where you learn.
The skills.
Yep.
Not just talking about it, but actually doing it. We're members of some great survival groups.
I have a couple I've seen.
We should probably start recommending them on our site.
Yep.
Let's see. Sandy Crow. She says she lives in Tasmania, and they're experiencing some strange weather here. A lot of wind and humidity, which is odd for Tasmania.
Okay.
Tammy, she's getting rice and practicing growing. I think she said she's growing potatoes. Jimmy Kane says some things he's been stocking are rice, beans, lentil grains, dried fruit, sugar, yeast for alcohol, pasta, oatmeal, canned food, honey, peanut butter. People are sharing what they're doing when it comes to prepping. Tammy also had a good comment. She said, the time to practice is now. So I already said that, I guess. Didn't I? Somebody, Todd said, tell your husband I said hi, Grand Solar Minimum GSM News. So Todd says hi. They're always saying hi to me in the chat. You finally got someone like saying, well, Jake's not in here. I'm going to say hi to Jake. So, let's see. There's so many.
If I was in the chat while I did the show would be 5 hours long.
I could go on and on. You guys are wonderful in the chat. I do want to give a shout out to the people in the Midwest in the chat that are giving us some updates on what's going on. Hi, Turbine says we might get 1 to 2 inches of snow here in southwest Nebraska. I am not happy about hearing that.
Right.
And then Chris Water said Alton, Illinois, flooding. West Alton Interstate is down to one side only. Highway 367. It's really great seeing people affected by these areas in the chat, or areas be in the chat sharing this information, because it is very difficult to break up the information and disseminate what's fact, fiction.
Yep.
And that is very important to us. So hearing from people directly so we can relay it to more people on this channel is awesome. Great to see you guys here. And I have taken up so much time. Sorry about that, Jake.
No problem.
Hello to all the people I didn't say hi to. How's that, Jake?
Sounds good.
Now I'm done.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Mari will actually get into splitting up this video so we can break it down for you guys. You can watch it in smaller forms instead of the whole hour. We'll break it up into clips for you. The weekend, we may have a show. I got a friend from Denmark we used to get on here and talk on the weekends. As long as schedules are right for the taking, we might have a show on Saturday or Sunday. But nevertheless, we will be back Monday morning with our solar update, and next Tuesday with our next live broadcast. Unless something happens and it's breaking news and we have to be on the air, of course, that will happen, of course, if we have to be on the air for any breaking news whatsoever. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us today. Please like and share. Subscribe to our channel. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter. We're on Patreon, just about everywhere. And, of course, don't forget thegrandsolarminimum.com. We're still building that website up. You still register into the website. It's free to register. There's no fees or anything to join our website. Mari has created this website to be almost its own social media platform, and we've yet to use it. So we encourage you guys to check it out, thegrandsolarminimum.com. All right, guys, we'll talk soon. Take care.